So after doing a tour in Fort Duffield, I'm wanting to do a little bit of research and talk a little bit about the Civil War, Kentucky and the Civil War. We actually had a whole bunch of civil wars, like, brother versus brother type of wars in America, specifically here in Kentucky, many times before the Civil War actually happened. The American Revolution, in fact, that's John Adams said it was a third in favor, third against, and third neutral. So that's brother versus brother. The American Revolution was brother versus brother. There's also about there's four intercontinental wars before the American Revolution: King George's War, King William's War, Queen Anne's War, and then the French and Indian War. So that's actually 5 civil wars, 5 world wars before the Civil War actually come. Even the War of 1812, it was very heavily involved when it comes to Kentucky. So Kentucky had, a lot of the Kentuckians were being used for cannon fodder for the War of 1812. The American Revolution, it was really just killing Native Americans. There wasn't much British. The only British person in Kentucky was Daniel Boone. He was the only British. He got, eventually he renounced the throne, right, and become American with the rest of us once he was put on trial for treason. But we've had the Civil War all over the place. When Lincoln wanted, to win the Civil War, he said he hopes to have God on his side, but he must have Kentucky. Strategically, Kentucky is centrally located right at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, right between the North and the South. And centrally located, very much the heart of America. I heard people in Missouri was saying that they're the heart of America. No, Kentucky is the heart of America, and that's the reason why Abraham Lincoln thought it was so vital. It's his home state too, so also the preservation of the Union has to do with that central, dark and bloody ground, right? To be able to, without Kentucky, what would America look like, right? It would just be a big hole in the middle, and possibly since Kentucky was the first Western. The first Western sort of march to the sea for the manifest destiny. That's if the Kentucky didn't go, to the British colonies and then eventually to America, it would look like an entire different continent, right? They might not have even gone past Kentucky. The British might have just had their 13 colonies, and then the Spanish or the French would have had, the West. So Kentucky in the Civil War, I think, is very important because it is very much a, brother versus brother. So there's a lot of fucking shit that's going on. A lot of fucking really bad, strong battles and wars that happen right here. Dark and bloody ground, and then there's lots of dark and bloody people. The American Civil War was the most bloodiest conflict when you're having a war on your own land, right? And there's a lot of, confusion about what it was for, but mostly it's about slavery, okay? So the slave issue was just absolutely immoral to some people. It was barbaric, of course it was. In Kentucky, there's a Presbyterian minister who tried to get, David Rice, who tried to get slavery abolished in the very first Constitution of Kentucky, but he failed. So just don't think that Kentucky's always been racist or white supremacist. There's countercurrents. And unfortunately, when that Presbyterian minister tried to get slavery abolished, not only did they keep slavery, but the people who wrote the Constitution made sure that no Baptist preachers could hold political power. So that's unfortunate. They're basically blocking the Baptist preachers that are doing good stuff. And then you get Nathan Bedford Forrest, who's a fucking Baptist Christian, KKK, right? That's all Christianity. And they go around murdering people. So those Christians were okay. The ones that murdered and had a bloody shirt, those were okay. But the Christians that said, hey, let's treat other people the way we're supposed to be treating them. Let's not have slaves and shit. Let's not whip a bunch of black people into submission like they're our fucking ox, right? If you said something like that, you would be a radical and you would have been rounded up too. So if you thought blacks were people in Kentucky, I would even say probably even the Union soldiers were probably racist as fuck. So I got 2 books here. I got The Hidden History of Kentucky and the Civil War. And then I got John Hunt Morgan and His Raiders. Okay, this book is actually fucking powerful as shit. I got this from Eastern Kentucky, and it's in 8th grade in Gallatin County, had Miss Erickson, okay? And Miss Erickson, she put this play on, and then my classmates all gathered up and ganged up on me, and they murdered me, right? So, very prescient, but also Miss Erickson, I'm thinking differently about Miss Erickson these days. I feel like she actually wanted us to be artistic and wanted us to be educated. Something she got us to do during the Civil War era, because it was a unit fucking thing, so we all had to do something with the Civil War. And so I wrote about William Tecumseh Sherman, and I was with William Tecumseh Sherman on his great, his celebrated march to the sea. Now, supposedly it's celebrated because he's the Union general and he did well, but his march to the sea was just straight up terrorism. And while I was writing it, it was interesting because I was pretending to be, you know, a Union soldier, and while I acknowledged that it was horrible what we were doing, you know, to people, I also was like, oh, and I'm kind of enjoying it too, right? Because these people were for slavery and all this other shit. So it was interesting actually being part of it and then rationalizing it and justifying this sort of violence. William Tecumseh Sherman, I heard a lot of people actually said he came up with the Scorched Earth campaign, where it's just terrorism. You don't just attack the military, you attack the women, children, everybody in their houses and shit. The University Press of Kentucky. I remember getting this book and actually just reading it straight through. It's a fascinating portrait of a man. It was written by Edison H. Thomas, but Basil W. Duke was on there, so he wrote extensively about all the campaigns. How he, you know, hung out with John Hunt Morgan, and John Hunt Morgan was known as the Confederate, the Thunderbolt of the Confederacy, right? So he's the Thunderbolt of the Confederacy. The Confederates they weren't industrialized and they didn't have as much, you know, civilization or organization when it comes to the other people. But when John Hunt Morgan said, fuck it, you know, he had been like practicing for war for several years before the war actually broke out. And when the war broke out, he became the Thunderbolt of the Confederacy. He gave the Confederates some type of hope because he was a raider. So he wasn't declaring wars or battles. He was going there, just, you know, as a guerrilla, sort of like a Native American, just kind of burning up railroad tracks and tearing shit up just to be a fucking nuisance. Just total warfare. But total warfare had happened under George Washington against the Iroquois in upper New York. Immediately after or I think during the Revolution, but immediately after too, you have all the Indian Wars of Miami and the Shawnee of Ohio. So come to total warfare, I mean, that started with the Pequot War. That started with the Puritans, right? They wiped everybody out. We celebrate Thanksgiving because of 700 women, children, and old men that were murdered by the British fucking colonists. So the British fucking colonists come in there and they just wipe all the fucking Pequot out, right? Not the warriors. They didn't even want to fuck with the warriors. They just killed their women and children and the old men while the warriors were gone. Okay, so the scorched earth policy, terrorism, just kill them all type of mentality that was here before William Tecumseh Sherman. He's not the one that started it. George Washington is somebody that was earlier. The Pequot War, that's 1637. You know, so that was happening in the 1600s. And so I'm not defending him. I'm just saying he's not the first one. So you can't say he's the first one with the scorched earth, you know, terroristic campaign. Because it's not true. And it's war, right? War as hell, so the motherfucker went around. I remember reading the book and actually being very much on John Hunt Morgan's side, okay? And that's always, I don't know, I guess you're sympathetic with the losers, like, well, why did they lose, you know? But that's, I've grown past that, right? So John Hunt Morgan also attacked the Germans at Germantown and Sanfordtown. So when the Gripshovers came to America in 1869, 4 years after the Civil War, you had this fucking asshole, this Confederate fucking piece of shit who really wanted slavery in Kentucky, was sitting there murdering and attacking my Gripshover, you know, German ancestors. So fuck you. There is a lot of anti-Germanism. So there was a know-nothing party that was coming up, and they were trying to define what it meant to be an American, very much similar today with the culture wars. You got Bill O'Reilly who's sitting there saying, well, the perfect American is white, you know, white, male, family, husband, wife, kids, Christian, right? So that's sort of what they're going with. That's the fucking ideal American. When the Germans and other immigrants started coming in here, there's a lot of bias towards, you know, other people who weren't English, you know, fucking royalists, fucking, you know, kiss-ass fucking dickheads. And it's such fucking bullshit. It just shows you the racism. White people were so racist. It wasn't just black people. They didn't just hate black people. They hated anybody that wasn't just like them. And so they were a bunch of fucking, you know, Bible-thumping, Puritan wannabes are murdering people. So they're not true Christians, right? They're fucking terrorists, fucking animal psycho savages. Now, the reason why I want to bring up William Tecumseh Sherman, the reason why I'm talking about the Civil War is because I went to the Fort Duffield in West Point, and I was very impressed with Fort Duffield. So, William Tecumseh Sherman, he was the one that got Fort Duffield installed. And so he actually got, you know, he's the one that got it set up and shit. Now, Fort Duffield, I had a cool-ass picture here. Here's a picture, right? Here's Fort Duffield. So you see some of the towns. I guess that's West Point, right? That's Fort Duffield, West Point, Kentucky, as drawn by Charles I. Kelly Company, Infantry, 9th Michigan Infantry Regiment in 1861. The fort faces south, and this is the backside. But you had, you know, these fucking terrible animal psycho savages. They were killing my fucking grip server ancestors. So for any grip server to sit there and be like the South will rise again and the Confederate is all about, you know, they're all about the Confederacy and shit, you're fucking stupid. You don't know fucking history. You don't know grip server history. You don't know the German history or heritage. You know, in the very beginning, that basically it's fucking bullshit. So basically, their racism was so much. It wasn't just black people. They hated other white people too. They hated the Irish. They hated Germans. They hated the Dutch. They hated anybody that wasn't British, English, Protestant. Right? White Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, fascist, totalitarian. And so it's fucking insane. It's fucking bullshit, really, to be honest with you. But it just shows you how racist they were. So it wasn't just against black people. It was against any white person that thought blacks were people. It was against the Germans. It was against the Dutch. It was against Irish. Anybody who was an immigrant, even if you had white skin, you weren't good enough because you had to be a particular white person in order to be good enough in America. So it says it's faced south, meaning that this, you know, they're being fortified from the opposite side. So if they came up on the river, I guess the Union controlled the river, and in this fort, they weren't worried about attacks coming up the river and getting them from behind. They was more worried about the south, you know, coming straight up for them. It's also on the top of the hill, and it's also, you see the entire fort. We only saw like 2 little shelters and some earthworks, and that's it. But this, you know, it was a whole fort, and also very clear. I don't see any trees whatsoever. It's like just a, you know, a flat hilltop, and so they just built, you know, their fort on top of a flat hilltop. Now there's trees all over the place. Then there is still this little town and still some, you know, like boats and shit that's going up and down. So West Point still exists there, and Fort Duffield, there's remnants of Fort Duffield. So this is, you know, this is West Point. This is the place that I just checked out. And yeah, so William Tecumseh Sherman, let's talk about him a little bit. He was a big general, scorched earth, right? He was criticized for the scorched earth, for total warfare. So that was some of the racism that was going on. I'm going to read some of the passage actually out of this Hidden History of Kentucky, and then I'm going to combine this with some of the screen capture video. So, because there's a lot of things here, and I just want to kind of cover the biggest points of the Civil War, and then I just want to call it a night, okay? So, let's start out with The Hidden History of Kentucky and the Civil War by Barry Craig. So he starts out with some fascinating information straight from the beginning. So who was the first entity to secede from the Union? South Carolina, right? Everybody knows, anybody who knows anything about the Civil War knows South Carolina was the first to secede. They seceded because they wanted slavery and they was pissed off. Read their charter. All the southern states, you know, seceded because of slavery, because of the enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act, and some of the other things. But basically 5 of the 6 reasons, you know, of the reasons for their charter would be because of slavery. So to say that slavery had nothing to do with the Civil War, you're fucking stupid. With his march to the sea. So I'm not for sure when he actually got Fort Duffield constructed, but his march to the sea was towards the end of the war. September, October, Sherman and Hood played cat and mouse in North Georgia and Alabama. It was a march to Savannah, Georgia, right? That's where he eventually ended up to. He wanted to make Georgia howl, and that's like Kissinger. Henry Kissinger wanted to make Chile's economy scream. And they put, you know, America put guns in behind Pinochet and his fascism, and so fascist capitalism was installed in Chile. And they did that, you know, the same fucking mentality: make the Georgia howl, make Chile economy scream. And so that's what he was doing with the Scorched Earth campaign. Yeah, I don't want to go too much into this anymore. So while in Savannah, Sherman learned from a newspaper his infant son, Charles Celestine, had died during the Savannah campaign. The general had never seen the child. Okay, the states' rights is an argument people use because they wanted to have slavery. So they didn't want, somebody just believes that the country of Kentucky just should be stronger than the United States of America. There's people out there that might be that principled. But the reason why they wanted states to have rights over the fucking federal government was so that they could keep their slaves. They wanted slavery to stick around, so they kept their slaves. That's the reason why. So his child died during his campaign, which is sad. General Grant is a great general. I know him well. He stood by me when I was crazy, and I stood by him when he was drunk. And now, sir, we stand by each other always. So that's sweet. So, an old infernal jackass. So actually, Kentucky gave birth to Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was born in LaRue County in Hodgenville. And so he was born here, and then he left, like, you know, as a toddler in his teenage years and went to Indiana. His dad treated him real shit, beat the shit out of him, treated him like a little bitch-ass slave, right? Shut up, Abe. Do as the fuckers you're told, Abe. Shut your damn mouth. And that's when he grew a hatred for slavery. Why the fuck should he work for free for somebody else and get nothing for it? He gets the abuse and violence and all the coercive fucking bullshit. But when it actually comes down to, you know, him getting in on the world. So Tom Lincoln was a total dickhead. Tom Lincoln saw his granddad fucking die, you know, or his father die. So so that's William Tecumseh's sermon, right? He does the march to the sea, burns everything, burns everybody. Eventually, you know, the Confederates fucking lose, so you can say, well, the tactics helped in the war, but it's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki in a way, you know, at what fucking point do you become the monsters? And I'm not for sure. Yeah, I celebrate this man here, Stephen Burbridge. He was known to Tom Lincoln. This would be Abraham Lincoln. This would be the great-grandfather of Abraham Lincoln. He got attacked by Shawnee Indians, and little Tom Lincoln was a kid at the time, and he just shit his pants. So this little fucking kid that just shit his pants when his father was dead, now he's fucking forcing his son to be a slave, you know, his own personal fucking slave just to pay off some debt to his neighbors. So when Abraham Lincoln ran in Kentucky, Abraham Lincoln lost, hands down. He got less than 1% of the vote. As the Butcher of Kentucky, he was put in power, I think, in '64, and towards the end of the war also. But he was put in power in Kentucky, and then they declared martial law because of all the guerrilla attacks. You had Nathan Bedford Forrest, and you had John Hunt Morgan just doing these Confederate raiders. So they would just, you know, go into town and basically do terrorism, attack everybody, anybody, attack the railroads, attack the electric lines, you know, just attack anything and everything. It was total warfare. So because of these guerrilla fucking tactics, that's why you get a guy named Stephen Gano Burbridge. So Abraham Lincoln was hated in Kentucky worse than Barack Obama. Barack Obama, he at least got 40-something% of the vote, and he wound up winning like 6 counties, okay? So it's not, you know, it's not a great victory, but compared to Abraham Lincoln, Barack Obama won more electoral seats. So compared Lincoln to, this is Barack Obama's favorite president is Abraham Lincoln. So it's amazing. You got all these fucking racist fucking Confederate assholes sitting there talking about how Lincoln is still the dick today because they're white supremacists. They hate black people. It has nothing to do with some fucking moral, ethical stance. It's just they're racist, right? So they're racist and they hate Abraham Lincoln. But they was saying something else about Lincoln only got 1% of the vote. He was hated here, so actually Obama was hated less than Lincoln. And Lincoln's a great-ass president, so Lincoln is one of, it's incredible because Barack Obama is the one that actually instilled a love for Abraham Lincoln for me. You know, I grew up in Kentucky, but I've never heard anything good about him. In fact, I got a cousin that said he went to Lincoln's hometown and he spit on a statue, and he felt so good about spitting on a statue. Yeah. And Stephen Gano Burbridge was going around and he was fucking dominating, right? He was basically, he was a butcher, but he was going after the Confederates, and so he got order reestablished in Kentucky, which the racist, white supremacist Kentuckians who really wanted slavery and were willing to die, fight and die, in order for black people to always be in subjugation, they didn't like him. They also didn't like Abraham Lincoln, or less than 1% voted for Abraham Lincoln. So there's actually more love for Barack Obama in Kentucky than what there was for Abraham Lincoln when he was elected. So there's that's progress, right? So before there was less than 1%, now we're getting like 30, 40. So that's you know, that's the white supremacy that's going on today. So thank God for Barack Obama and actually, you know, getting me, you know, my mind thinking, right, Lincoln, yeah, he killed a lot of people, states' rights, it's a lot of bullshit. People should be free and should be independent, but when you say they should be free and independent, that includes the slaves that they were oppressing. So the states' right argument doesn't make any fucking sense at all. And fuck you, you know, fucking slavery was fucking bullshit. So you was absolutely on the wrong side of history. You were in the wrong, just like Kentucky is today. They're in the wrong side of history. The rest of America heard Barack Obama's, you know, dog whistle, but Kentucky is like, we're white supremacists. We hated Lincoln, we hated Obama, and we're always gonna fucking hate. You wanna know why Kentucky's got all the problems it has? Kentucky's got all the problems it has because it's been run by a bunch of white supremacist, Confederate fucking psychopath, you know, fucking murdering fucking pieces of shit. They're in favor of oppression. They're in favor of slavery. They're in favor of murdering people in order to make sure slavery is instituted forever. So they're willing to murder fucking people in order to oppress them. That's how sick these Confederates are. Percent, and also I think 6 counties. I think there's 8 counties 2008, and then 4 counties in 2012. So I just averaged 6 counties who love Obama. There's 120 counties, and only 6 of them, voted for Obama. But I still think it's better than what Lincoln did, how Lincoln did, and it's the fucking continuation is sickening, to be honest with you. But let's carry on. Okay, so Leonidas Polk. Okay, in order to maintain that, you got child abuse too. That's identical to child abuse. Do as the fuck as I said, kid, or else there will be violence. Black folks too. It actually blows me away when I see black folks beating up their kids. Where have I seen that before? Fucking, some old asshole motherfucker sitting there using violence and saying, you better be my damn bitch ass slave, my damn bitch ass personal servant, or else I'm gonna put violence on you. That's white supremacy. So, that's it goes across the board. Fuck all hierarchy. The race thing is just to point out the hierarchy. And let's carry on. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln wasn't popular in Kentucky. He got less than 1% of the vote, so he didn't win the election here, but he did realize the military importance of the state. No president while in office was more unpopular in the bluegrass than Lincoln. Okay, so I just want to talk about Kentucky, and I want to hit the main fucking points about Kentucky. And so Kentucky Civil War, there's lots of going on. It was known as brother versus brother. There's the history of Kentucky. There are some notable battles: the Battle of Perryville and the Battle of Millstown, which is Logan's Run or something. So, antebellum Kentucky, the citizens were split regarding the issues central to the Civil War in 1860. Slaves composed 19.5% of the Commonwealth's population. So 1 out of fucking 5 Kentuckians were slaves. They were black slaves. So there were black slaves all over the place. And it wasn't just plantation owners. There were small farms that had 1 or 2 slaves or so too. So I'm not trying to get them off the hook. I just feel like poor whites have way more to lose. I mean, you are the slaves, right? Wage slaves, working class people, you're the fucking slaves. So you want to hate on black people are amazed. Lincoln and the Republicans had opposed slavery. Kentucky was a slave state. Kentuckians reviled Lincoln from Paducah to Pikeville. In one letter, a young hothead from Lexington called the president an infernal old jackass, right? So this is Lexington. He's an old infernal jackass, right? So I should relish his groans and agonies if I could see him put to torture in hell or anywhere else, the youth added. He was chosen to become the representative of the Republican Party, and I, as such, should like to hang him. Black folks and then force them into slavery. Well, now they got free labor. Why would they pay any white person to do any of the jobs when you get free labor? So it seems like a bad deal all around for everybody, right? It's against the self-interest of poor whites, whereas it's totally against the humanity of black folks. So really the moral issue is like the biggest one. So we had 1 out of 5 people in the Commonwealth were black, which is different than today. Today you have 20% in Louisville. So today you have the same amount of black to white that you did back in the antebellum Kentucky, but that's Louisville today, right? And Louisville is sort of the chocolate city, the only major chocolate city, I'll say, in Kentucky. And the chocolate city doesn't have as much black folks proportion-wise as antebellum Kentucky did. So just to let you know how many black folks were here, it was all over the place. It wasn't just in the big cities, it was everywhere. So 1 out of 5 black folks were enslaved in Kentucky when the Civil War began. So because he was against slavery, you had the people from Lexington, the fucking, journalists from Lexington sitting there talking about how they want to murder Lincoln and kill him and do all this fucking just bloodshed and shit. What you want... And the slave issue makes no sense. Most Kentuckians did not own slaves. Most Kentuckians... 10,000 slave owners in the Confederate South are the ones who controlled the entire economy. So you had a bunch of poor white, Kentuckians sitting there defending these 10,000 slave owners to make sure they were allowed to fucking own slaves. So, most people didn't have fucking slaves, but they defended the institution. I remember this one racist on topics, but he was sitting there saying, well, I may be poor... Kentucky, along with North Carolina, also boasted the best educational systems in the South. Transylvania University been one of the long been one of the most respected institutions of higher learning in the nations, and while its reputation begun to fade by 1860, other Kentucky schools like Centre College and Georgetown College were gaining prominence. So Lexington is sort of like the Athens of the West. The Kentucky sort of opened up, past Appalachia, and people were coming through and finding new spots, setting up, establishing shop here, or going to some other spots. So
Kentucky along with North Carolina also boast
backwards and uneducated and shit, and I have all these problems that Kentucky has, but at least I'm white. That's the reason Kentucky has all the fucking problems it has. They're basically saying it doesn't matter if people are dying, if there's homeless, if people are losing their teeth. What they do give a shit about, what they really give a shit about, is hating black people. That's most important to a Kentuckian. They would rather hate black people than that make sure that their own has food or land or cars or clothing. They don't care about anybody in their community. It's all a bunch of selfish, untrustworthy, dog-eat-dog sort of capitalists, but before then, it was just slavery. And that's so stupid because for poor white people, how can you compete with a slave? You can't compete with a slave. Slaves depress the wages. So for poor whites, slaves was actually making, you can't compete with slavery. So you had to work for like $1 or something, just dirt cheap, because, you can't compete with fucking free labor.
Right, I already said that. Politically, the Commonwealth had produced some of the country's best-known leaders. Former Vice Presidents John C. Breckinridge and Richard M. Johnson, who killed Tecumseh, both hailed from the Bluegrass State, as did Henry Clay and the future U.S. President Abraham Lincoln and the Confederate President Jefferson Davis. However, by the time of the Civil War, the Commonwealth was in a politically confused state. The decline of the Whig Party, which Clay had founded, had left many politicians looking for an identity. Many joined the increasingly popular Democratic Party, a few joined the newly formed Republican Party, while still others associated with one of the numerous minor parties, such as the Know Nothing Party. They call it minor, but Know Nothing Party was all the rage. A lot of the fucking governors were Know Nothings, and Know Nothings was rising substantially, crazily, right? Just gaining in power all over the place. It was basically making a big sweep right before the Civil War. If the Civil War didn't happen, I would say the Know Nothing Party would have been around still today. But the Civil War changed all that. So, which is good. The Know Nothings was basically just white people being more racist, not only against black folks, but against Germans and Irish, and also Catholics, too. So really, it's an anti-foreign element group, but it was specifically with the Germans and the Irish, those damn kraut fucking eating, lager beer drinking assholes.
And it wasn't totally free, but, they owned them or whatever, so then it was sort of free. But that's, it makes no sense for any poor white people to be in defense of slavery, whether you were here today, whether you were there back then. It did not help you. It hurt you in every which way. But because people are racist and they want to feel good about somebody or something, feel like they're above somebody or something, that's where the racism comes from. They ain't got shit. They ain't got nothing. But hell, at least I'm better than that black, that old black man we all fucking pick on down the road.
And then the Germans and Irish and the Catholics too. So it was mostly Protestants who had started. Mostly Protestants who started America, right? The Puritans were Protestants. And so what happens, right? Kentucky is vastly important strategically, militarily. Lincoln says he hoped to have God, but he must have Kentucky. So what made Kentucky so special, right? It was strategically important to both North and South. The Commonwealth ranked ninth in population in 1860. It was a major producer of such agricultural commodities as tobacco, corn, wheat, hemp, and flax. Okay, so wheat, hemp, flax, corn, tobacco, they're producing lots of important shit here in this state. And since there's a war going on, people got to eat. Geographically, she was important to the South because the Ohio River would provide a defensible boundary along the entire length of the state. So she was important. For some reason, people always talk about states like it's a woman, Lady Liberty, Germania. Kentucky Governor Beriah Magafin. Now this is important, okay? This is when the rubber meets the road.
And that's just fuck that type of mentality. Fuck the people that's some bullshit, right? So he wants to see Abraham Lincoln hung. He doesn't give a shit. Let's see. There's one Lexington, Kentucky statesman newspaper said that Abraham Lincoln was afraid to visit his native state because voters would catch him, tar and feather him, and set him on fire to make a torchlight procession of him. Which is probably true. Less than 1% of the vote. That's like embarrassing. In 1860, John Bell, candidate of the Constitutional Union Party, earned Kentucky's dozen electoral votes. So instead of Lincoln, Kentucky voted for John Bell. John Bell got 66,000 votes to 53,000 for John C. Breckinridge of Lexington. Breckinridge, big slave fucking, big slavery advocate. He was a Southern Democrat. Also 26,000 for Northern Democrat Stephen A. Douglas. So you had Northern, Douglas Lincoln debates. He got some votes, but John C. Breckinridge and John Bell got most of the votes when it came to Kentucky. So basically Douglas and Lincoln wasn't even part of the fucking discussion when it came to Kentucky. It was between John Bell and John C. Breckinridge. And I don't know much about them. One's Constitutional Union Party, so one's all about the Constitution. And he's the one that wound up winning. Then John C. Breckinridge was all about slavery and shit. So I don't know what John Bell was actually like. I'm not sure what Kentucky is saying that they wanted in John Bell, but he didn't become president, so it doesn't matter. But you can kind of tell, the mentality of the people by the way that they vote.
As the war break out in Kentucky, we declare neutrality, but all of a sudden somehow we become Union, right? Our government goes Union. Well, how did that happen? Our governor was very much in solidarity with the southern states. So when Lincoln asked to raise some troops for the Union cause, Bri Magafin sends a record saying, no, I will not, subdue my sister states. And so, that's our governor. That's the Kentucky's governor. And so it was actually sort of honorable because he wanted a neutral party. He didn't want to use guns against his Confederate people, which he also felt kinship with. So he was sort of in the middle, and he was trying to play this middleman role. He goes around trying to get all these compromises fucking guaranteed or signed or whatever, trying to stop the war from actually happening, but he couldn't actually do it. So, and then Bri Magafin, I hear later on, he actually... after the war, he encouraged acceptance of the Union victory and passage of the 13th Amendment. So he totally changes his fucking tune, right? His tune. After the war was over, he says, yes, let's be Americans now. Yes, let's pass the 13th Amendment, which outlaws slavery. So he changes his mind, right? He becomes, I guess,
Lincoln won a second term in 1864, run on the Union ticket. He lost Kentucky again, but fared better in the Bluegrass State. He carried 25 of 101 counties that posted returns. So, even so, Democrat George McClellan outpolled Lincoln 64,000 to 27,000. Kentucky thus gave the president the lowest vote he received in any of the 25 states which participated in the balloting. So again, Kentucky doesn't vote very much for Lincoln. There's martial law and some other shit, but really, when you got Confederates killing a bunch of innocent fucking Unionists, people that are in favor of black liberation, who gives a shit? Like, seriously, like, who cares what the people of Kentucky actually fucking thought during the Civil War? They were in favor of fucking slavery. They was in the wrong side of history, and whenever you're walking down the wrong road, it's never too late to go back.
What do you want to say? He became a better person, right? So he evolved, right? He got some rehab. But before then, he's fighting for the Confederates. He's saying, no, I'm not going to do what you want, Lincoln, right? Which isn't pro-Confederate, but it's definitely anti-Union. And then eventually, the legislature of Kentucky kicks Bri Magafin out. And but not before he had chosen who he wanted to succeed him. So there was a compromise, right? He gets to choose the next governor who he wants to succeed him, but he has to go. So Bri Magafin called a special session of the Kentucky General Assembly on December 27th, 1860. Kentucky's general ass. And December 27th, 1860, and asked the legislators for a convention of Kentucky to decide the Commonwealth's course regarding secession. The majority of the General Assembly had Unionist sympathies, however, and declined the governor's request. Fearing the state's voters would favor secession, the Assembly did, however, send 6 delegates to a February 4th peace conference in Washington, D.C., and asked Congress to call a national convention to consider potential resolutions to the secession crisis, including the Crittenden Compromise authored by Kentuckian John J. Crittenden.
But they didn't want to go back. They started out by being racist, white supremacist assholes, and they were doubling down. We're white supremacist assholes, and we're always going to be white supremacist assholes, so fuck Lincoln. We're never going to vote for him ever again. And I'm glad that the Union won, and I'm glad actually Kentucky supplied more soldiers to the Union cause. I think it was like 100,000 versus 50,000, something like that. So 100,000 goes to the Union and 50,000 goes for the Confederacy. You also had a lot of black soldiers that were liberated in Camp Robinson, and they fought for the Union too. So the majority of Kentuckians fought for the winning side. They fought for the Union. They fought for Abraham Lincoln. They fought for the United States of America. Some Confederates were terrorists who used violence to destroy the United States of America. Those Confederates still exist in Kentucky today, and they're still trying to destroy the country today for the same fucking reasons. Shit hasn't changed that much from the Civil War till today, and that's fucking sad and sick. And let's see here.
When General Assembly convened again on March 20th, it called for a convention of the border states in the Kentucky capital of Frankfort on May 27th, 1861. Again, that call went unheeded. Legislators also passed the proposed 13th Amendment to the Constitution that would have guaranteed slavery in states where it was already legal. So, all this is going on right before it breaks out. Then eventually you have South Carolina secedes, right? April 15th, 1861, President Abraham Lincoln sent a telegram to Kentucky Governor Bri Magafin requesting that the Commonwealth supply part of the initial 75,000 troops to put down the rebellion. Magafin, a Southern sympathizer, replied, President Lincoln, Washington, D.C., I will not send a man nor a dollar for the wicked purpose of subduing my sister southern states. B. Magafin. So he takes a fucking strong stance. Fuck you, fuck your troops, I ain't gonna fucking fight for America. It's all about Kentucky. And he's talking about the sister and southern state. So, it's a slave state. And instead, most Kentuckians favor John J. Crittenden positions that the Commonwealth should act as a mediator between the two sides. To that end, both houses of the General Assembly passed declarations of neutrality, a position officially declared by Governor Magafin on May 20th, 1861.
So, the Confederacy of Portland. Who was the first state to secede? I asked you this question in the very beginning. It was South Carolina, but I asked you who were the first nation. Who's the first entity? And the first entity actually was here in Kentucky. It was Portland. And Portland neighborhood has been known for being a white supremacist town for a long-ass time. I lived in Portland for just a few months until I got fucking robbed. But before I got fucking robbed, I was going to enjoy fucking Portland. It seemed like it was nice. It was an independent it's an Irish neighborhood, okay? So I think there's countercurrents that's going on there. They're not just white supremacists, but there's, that's where a lot of Irish and a lot of other folks were, and they don't like to be part of Louisville. They secede away from the city, so they're their own thing. The map of Portland, all the roads are going in one direction and not the other direction, so you can tell it's almost like it's got a whole nother flavor to the city, but really I think Portland leads. Their white supremacy kind of leads the rest of fucking Louisville's. Portland's also a poor fucking, sort of white trash area too.
Paul Dixon and S.S. Nicholas advocated the Northern cause. The sextet agreed only to continue the doctrine of neutrality, however, and called for the formation of a 5-member board to coordinate the Commonwealth's defense. The General Assembly created the board on May 24th and vested in it supervision of the state's military power reserved in the Constitution for the governor. So, they're changing shit around, right? The Commonwealth's military forces proved to be just as divided as the general populace. A state guard under the command of Simon B. Buckner. State guards, Confederate, largely favored Confederates. Newly formed Home Guard were mostly Unionists. Several close calls almost started a conflict within the state, but Simon B. Buckner successfully negotiated with Union General George B. McClellan and Tennessee Governor Isham Harris to maintain the Commonwealth's neutrality through the summer. Okay.
So, the Portland's neighborhood was the first one to actually secede from the Union. The Portland seceded from Louisville on December 13th to the 14th in 1860, and South Carolina left the Union December 20th. So they said they was just playing a joke or whatever, but they was serious. They actually fucking published this shit. So I don't know how big of a joke it is when you're actually, back in the day you didn't even have fucking typewriters or word processors, so you had to type that shit or fucking write it all by hand. They're writing constitutions about secession fucking, laws and shit. So how big of a fucking joke? I think this is real serious shit, but it became a joke after South Carolina seriously seceded. So it's kind of like, oh shit, this might turn into a fucking war, right? So apparently some Portlanders were never happy with their community's merger with larger Louisville. Portland seceded from Louisville and with whoops of derision. He had that Portland delegates garnered at Fred Duckwall's saloon on the night of December 13th and proclaimed the Confederacy of Portland. A formal declaration of independence was to happen early after lunch on December 14th.
So why did we get William Bull Nelson established Camp Dick Robinson, a Union recruiting camp in Girard County. When Crittenden objected to this violation of Kentucky's neutrality, Nelson replied that a camp of loyal Union men, native Kentuckians, should assemble and camp under the flag of the Union and upon their native soil, and should be a cause of apprehension is something I do not clearly understand. Governor Magafin appealed to President Lincoln to close the camp, but he refused. Meanwhile, Confederate volunteers covertly crossed the Tennessee border and massed at Camp Boone, just south of Guthrie. Kentucky's fragile neutrality was coming to an end. So Camp Dick Robinson, established by William Bull Nelson, changes everything. It changes all the shit around, right? So Camp Dick Robinson is a huge thing because a lot of slaves went to Camp Dick Robinson and got their freedom there. They got, some of them got their guns and shit and become soldiers, and that's the best way to fucking fight for your freedom. The election resulted in a veto-proof Unionist majorities of 76-28. So the elections of...
So more resolutions laid claim to one half of Jefferson County Courthouse and other public buildings and property throughout the city and stated that we do not care if Shippingport joins us or not. So Shippingport, I guess that's another part of the city or something, but we don't care if they're part of us or not. The Confederates' flag was to be 2 catfish, sow, tant on a market stall for a background. McDonald wrote because the Portland secessionists met at a local watering hole that may have been moved by the spirit or spirits of the day.
1861 basically turned all of Kentucky into Union. So Kentucky was so Union, they loved Lincoln, they did everything for America and fought for the cause, they fought against slavery, but the Confederates and, they won elections afterwards. So Kentucky seceded after the Civil War, and the Confederates got, the governorships, and they got a lot of political power right afterwards. So we're like the only state, we are the only state that seceded after the Civil War, and which is fucked up because we won the fucking Civil War. We were on the right side of history. We were against slavery. It's all fucking right. It's all good. And yet we're still assholes around here today that's like, fuck Lincoln, all about Confederacy. Really? Fuck Lincoln? I bet those same motherfuckers couldn't name they couldn't name the presidents after Lincoln, right? So you seriously looked at all the presidents and you came to the conclusion Lincoln was the worst one? Go fuck yourself. There's a lot of insignificant fucking presidents, right? The 21 years that we weren't at war, whoever was president during those 21 years, I'd say is pretty good. Kept this country, this warmongering country at peace. But yeah, I don't believe these Confederate assholes actually fucking weighed out who is good and who is bad.
So Portland fucking seceded before South Carolina. That's the big takeaway from that. A very delicate question has arisen as to Western Kentucky. If Tennessee hadn't seceded from the Union, Kentucky's Jackson Purchase region might not become part of a new Confederate state, according to a state historical marker on the court square of Mayfield.
I do understand sort of martial law and having to force people, to bend to your will and shit, but in hindsight, slavery was a fucking moral evil. It was disgusting. It was reprehensible, the worst slavery in all human history. You just watch Goodbye Uncle Tom and you'll hate white people at the very end because they're all involved in it, right? Everybody, every single one of them. In fact, if anybody tried to defend them, they would get lynched too. So if you thought black people were, humans, then the white people, the Ku Klux Klan, the racists thought you was just as bad as a black person. And so what happened here is neutrality is violated. So who attacks who first, right? So September 4th, 1861, Confederate Major General Leonidas Polk violated the Commonwealth's neutrality by ordering Brigadier General Gideon Johnson Pillow to occupy Columbus. So before...
I cannot stand fucking Western Kentucky, the tip of Western Kentucky. You want to talk about how many more, where all the Confederate racist fucking dickholes are? They're lynching. They killed Jessica Curran out there. A bunch of white supremacists, a bunch of fucking Confederates, and it's in the Jackson Purchase. So it's not that big a surprising. Jackson murdered all the Chickasaw, or kicked all the Chickasaw that was there. So it used to be the Chickasaw lands, and now we call it the Jackson Purchase. Fuck that. It's always been the Chickasaw Purchase. It'll always be the Chickasaw lands. It's been the Chickasaw lands for 14,000 years. White people want to come in and fucking rename their shit. No, it's the Chickasaw lands, okay? And so it's obvious when you genocide an entire fucking group of people and then install your own state and your own government there, and then you say it's a Jackson, so you put the name of the oppressor and the fucking genocider, that the people that are going to grow up there in that type of culture will think that Andrew Jackson, the genocider, is a great fucking hero, and that the Chickasaw natives were just either losers or not give a shit, but definitely not significantly historical, right? Not historically significant, not significant today. Who gives a shit? So, yeah, we killed all the Native Americans, right, as white people collectively, but I didn't do it, so who gives a fuck?
With Camp Dick Robinson, they're saying you're violating neutrality. Well, not really, just a recruiting station, and they're not having battles and shit, right? It's for Native Kentuckians. And so it wasn't like an outside invader. This was an outside invader. This was the Confederates who were lined up in Tennessee was now coming into Kentucky. The Union people north, of Kentucky weren't invading, but Major General Leonidas Polk did. So he comes in September 4th, 1861. He orders Brigadier General Gideon Johnson Pillow to occupy Columbus. Columbus was of strategic importance. Columbus, Kentucky was of strategic importance both because of the terminus of the Mobile and Ohio Railroad and because of its position along the Mississippi River.
Let's just go raise our Confederate flag and, shout a bunch of racist epithets at fucking people of color. So you want to see where the racism comes from? It's right then and there, right? We started out with segregation and fucking murder, but we're integrationists now. We're melting pot. Let's all join together. We don't need to genocide and hate and have racial fucking hatred anymore. It's so stupid. It's all made up, black, white. You made that shit up and you're telling your fucking kids that. So you're just brainwashed yourself and you're brainwashing your own fucking kids, and that's black and white.
Major General Leonidas Polk constructed Fort Du Russie in the high bluffs of Columbus and equipped it with 143 cannons. Polk called the fort the Gibraltar of the West to control traffic along the river. Polk stretched an anchor chain across the river from the bank in Columbus to the opposite side of the bank in Belmont, Missouri. Each link of the chain measured 11 inches long. Okay, anyway, so After he invades, then you get Union Brigadier General Ulysses S. Grant. He leaves Cairo, Illinois, enters Paducah, Kentucky on September 6th. So September 4th, you got the fucking Confederates invading Kentucky. 2 days later, the Union invades. So essentially, they was just waiting on one of the other ones to throw the first punch. And that's the dumbest fucking thing in the world, because as soon as it...
And Brown. That's everybody, really. So, Portland's secession was a point where I already talked about this. A very delicate question as rising to western Kentucky. If Tennessee hadn't seceded from the Union, Kentucky's Jackson Purchase region might have become part of the new Confederate state, according to the state historical marker. I already mentioned that. On the other hand, the Purchase remained resolutely rebel to the end of the war. So, right, Chickasaw lands were fucking big Confederate fucking assholes. Not only did they fucking wipe out the Chickasaw, but they've also... Hernando de Soto ran into the Chickasaw in western Kentucky too. So not only did they wipe out the fucking Chickasaw, but now they're fucking killing, they're anti-black people, they're pro-slavery, they're against white people, white unionists, they're against Abraham Lincoln, they're against the United States of America. And not only are they against the United States of America, but also... they're fucking terrorists. So they're against the fucking Union, against the country, and they're using bloodshed to defend these 10,000 fucking slave owners to make sure that they have a right to fucking whip the shit out of fucking African men and women.
Confederates fucking invaded. Now you have the Union that can fucking debate, say anything that they want to fucking say. During this time, you could also, make the argument that Camp Dick Robinson violated the neutrality, but you could also make the argument that the Confederate government that they had established in Bowling Green was also, right, a violation of the neutrality. They were setting up an entire separate government for Kentucky, had its own constitution, and they were they were going to resolve to, once the Confederates had won the war, they were going to be the ones who controlled Kentucky. So there's a lot of fucking interest on the line here. Seemingly pretty smart folks. Nobody from my high school would be able to get with me and write a constitution. There might be some, but I feel like in terms of knowing civic knowledge and politics, I feel like I am ahead of the curve.
So the Purchase, Ballard County, Carlisle County, Callaway County, Fulton County, Graves County, Hickman County, Marshall, and McCracken counties. These are Kentucky's only rebel majority region. So this is the Purchase. This is the Chickasaw lands. Ballard, Carlisle, Callaway, Fulton, Graves, Hickman, Marshall, and McCracken counties.
We're neutral. We're not going to be on one side or the other, right? We're going to be we're going to make amends with the two sides. Both sides respected Commonwealth's neutrality, but positioned themselves strategically to take advantage of any change in the situation. So there's going to be northern troops on the northern border and then southern troops on the southern. Union forces established a Camp Clay in Ohio, just north of the city of Newport, Kentucky, and Camp Joe Holt in Indiana, opposite Louisville, Kentucky. Meanwhile, Confederate troops constructed Forts Donelson and Henry just across Kentucky's southern border in Tennessee and stationed troops fewer than 50 yards from Cumberland Gap. Volunteers from the Commonwealth left the state to join up with whichever side they favored. Some covert recruiting also took place. Nearly 60 infantry regiments served in the Union armies versus just 9 in the Confederate. However, a rather large number of cavalry outfits joined the latter. John Breckinridge originally commanded the Orphan Brigade of the Army of the Tennessee, consisting of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 9th Kentucky infantry. So John Breckinridge was controlling a lot of fucking Confederate Kentuckians. The brigade's nickname came about allegedly because the soldiers' home counties were occupied by Union troops for most of the war and they couldn't go home to them. Right? So they were all orphans, right? The Union had fucking take over, so they couldn't even go home. Realizing the neutrality was becoming less and less feasible, 6 prominent Kentuckians met to find some solution for a state caught in the middle of a conflict. Governor Magafin, John C. Breckinridge, and Richard Halls represented the state's rights position, while Crittenden, Archibald...
You have that big fancy farm fucking event that's over in western Kentucky. It's fucking scary people, man. I see just fucking... the same thing I feel with Churchill Downs. I see white supremacists, a bunch of rich fucking aristocracy being stuck up and saying we got wealth and we're doing okay, and mocking all the fucking poor and working class peoples that's having to struggle out here. So that's the same thing I kind of see in western Kentucky. Confederate records indicate that between 5,000 and 5,500 purchased men volunteered for the Confederate forces. March 1st, 1865, report from the state adjutant general credited the purchase with 650 white Union enlistments and 251 African American enlistments through December 31st.
So its neutrality broken, both sides quickly moved to establish advantageous positions in the Commonwealth. General Assembly ordered the flag of the United States to be raised over the Capitol. So let's see. Ulysses S. Grant, he comes in to Paducah, and then they gave the Union control the northern end of the New Orleans and Ohio Railroad in the mouth of the Tennessee River. Governor Magafin denounced both sides for violating the Commonwealth's neutrality, calling for both sides to withdraw. In fact, Governor Magafin could have just ordered the troops out and started attacking both of them, right? Attacked both sides. Fuck the Polks, fuck the Confederates, fuck the Unions. This is Kentucky land. You can't fucking invade Kentucky. But instead, on September 7th, 1861, the General Assembly passed a resolution ordering the withdrawal of only Confederate forces. So Kentucky's legislature, the government, was in solidarity with Lincoln's war and ending slavery and keeping the Union together. So Kentucky, makes the right decision. Good. This is good. Okay, so neutrality is broken. They both established advantageous positions in the Commonwealth's Confederate forces under Albert Sidney Johnston formed a line in the southern regions of Kentucky and the northern regions of Tennessee, stretching from Columbus in the west to Cumberland Gap in the east.
Which is amazing. So everybody's fucking Confederate, right, in the goddamn western side of Kentucky in the fucking Chickasaw lands. So the Chickasaw lands, you got a bunch of fucking savages, right, a bunch of heathen savages, and these goddamn savages, most of them supplied their men for the fucking Confederates, but 650 of the men went to the Union Army, and then 251 of the black folks also went to the Union. So there was, about 1,000 folks or so that actually fought with the Union that came out of a fucking culture that was just, total white supremacy and fucking full of hatred.
Johnston dispatched Simon B. Buckner to fortify the middle of the line in Bowling Green. Buckner arrived on September 18th, 1861, and immediately began intensive drill sessions and constructing elaborate defenses in anticipation of a Union strike. So extensive were the fortifications at Bowling Green that a Union officer who later surveyed them commented, "The labor has been immense. Their troops cannot be well drilled. Their time must have been chiefly spent in hard work with the axe and the spade." All right. So
it's kind of like Willis Russell out of Owen County. He fought everybody. He fought the sheriff, the mayor. He fought anybody and everybody that was in his way, right? Because the sheriff was part of the fucking Ku Klux Klan, the fucking judge executive, and the mayor and all these public officials and shit, the coroner and the jailer and everybody. And so he single-handedly, with a couple of other people, had to get the state and some of the Union people or whatever to stop the Ku Klux Klan and their terrorism. They went around killing black people in Gallatin County and Owen County, and they actually killed 200, 300 black people in Gallatin County, and they pushed them across the river. Pushed them, right? Who knows what actually happened? They could have all just died right in the middle of the fucking river, turkey shoot, right? Just a bunch of white supremacists fucking killing a bunch of black people trying to swim across the Ohio River.
At the beginning, that's how it all fucking unravels, and that's how Kentucky gets into the Civil War, right? They tried to stay neutral. They couldn't make a decision between one or the other, and then eventually when the neutrality was violated, most of the legislature of Kentucky was in favor of Lincoln and the Unionists, and so Brian Magafin was left pretty much the pariah was left a pariah. And Camp Dick Robinson, I already told you about it. It was a big camp that took a lot of the slaves in, so there's
1,000 pigs and shit, but that feeds the world, right? So the sausage, the idea of sausage, I mean, I eat more sausage now, but that's just because I'm German, and I feel like I'm supposed to. But I can't eat sauerkraut. It smells bad. It's fucking cabbage. I had to fucking pick cabbage in the fucking when I was a kid. So, I hate pretty much all this shit. Tomatoes, you get all sticky and shit with fucking tomatoes. So it had contained 1,000 asps to sting 1,000 Dutchmen to eternity unshriven. So he wanted the folds of the flag to have a bunch of wasps. He wanted 1,000 wasps to sting 1,000 Dutchmen to eternity unshriven. So he wanted to kill them. He's like, man, I hope that this fucking flag had 1,000 wasps so the Dutchmen would die.
There's I think the numbers is 100,000 Kentuckians fought for the Union, and then 50,000 fought for the South, and then a big chunk of those that fought for the Union were the black soldiers. So remember, 1 out of 5 Kentuckians were slaves. So you had a lot of black population in this, in this state. And so when the Unionists came by, all a slave would have to do is run off the plantation, go to Camp Dick Robinson, and they would get, fed. And I don't know what they did afterwards. There was the big issue with it because they weren't allowed to kidnap or take any of the black slaves, but a lot of black slaves were running over to them, so they had sort of a crisis because they didn't want to, they didn't want to steal like property and shit, but at the same time they had a right to live. And so, eventually the Unionists, they do the right thing and they save the slaves, right? So, and the Confederates will eventually do this too, and it basically breaks the Confederacy when Jefferson Davis orders some of the black slaves to become soldiers. They didn't want to fucking kill any more of the white people. They had all these damn slaves that they were telling them what to do and shit, so let's put some guns in their hands. But the racists hated that idea because they feel like if you put a gun in the hands of the slaves, then that means they are just as equal as white folks, and then all the justification and reasons that you had was all bullshit. He ordered them to fight, but I think the war ended before they actually did it. But him actually saying, this is the Confederacy, saying that it's okay to put guns in the hands of black slaves to fight and kill, Americans, and who's defending the Union.
Really hated the Dutchman. It was the Dutchman to this guy, okay, Lynn G. Faxon. Not so much slavery, not much anything else, but the fucking Dutch, man. It just got under his fucking skin. He hated the German people, the German immigrants, right? So the mosquitoes of Cairo have been sucking the lager beer out of the dirty soldiers there so long they are bloated and swelled up as large as spring possums. An assortment of Columbus mosquitoes went up there the other day to suck some, but as they have not returned, the probability is that they went off with delirium tremens. In fact, the blood of these Hessians would poison the most degraded tumblebug in creation. It's a clever sentence.
So Leonidas Polk, he is the guy who fucked it up for the Confederates. This basically threw Kentucky into the arms of the Union, and he's a second cousin to President James K. Polk. He served as a bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Louisiana, so he's a Christian, right? A nice, good fucking Confederate Christian. You're going to have Nathan Bedford Forrest, who is a friend with Henry Watterson. We got the Watterson Expressway in Louisville. We got a Confederate statue at U of L. And there's a statue of Lincoln, but he's hidden underneath some trees right next to the library. But by the library, the main library downtown, in front of it, you got the fucking journalist Prentice, George Prentice, who actually was big into hating the Germans and the Irish and the Know Nothing. So he was big in the Know Nothing fucking movement and excited everybody to attack the Germans and kill 300 Germans in the Know Nothing riots of 1855 in Louisville. So Leonidas Polk, he's a Confederate general, right? He's Episcopal Diocese of Louisiana, so he's a fucking a clergyman fucking general. It's amazing, right? Believe in God, turn the other cheek. Now get your guns and start shooting, kill. So he's a fucking bishop, Protestant. He's often erroneously named Leonidas K. Polk. He had no...
And he's speaking with passion, but what the fuck? Fuck that asshole. The mosquitoes of Cairo. He's talking about sucking the lager beer out of the dirty soldiers. So that's the German soldiers, lager beer. That's another thing the Germans brought to America. Also, the entire education system, the Prussian industrial model education system came out of Germany. So basically, Americans, these white fucking asshole supremacists, are stealing the best of what Germany brought forth and pretending like it was theirs. They brought democracy, they brought constitutions, they wanted fairness, they was against slavery. Most of the Germans fought for the Union people. So the influx of German immigrants and Irish immigrants made America better. It made these white fucking supremacist assholes that hated all black people, made them better.
Middle name, never signed any documents as such. They said that he was killed in action. The K was derived from his listing in the post-bellum New Orleans press as Polk Leon K. But he was killed. That was the K for. So it's not Leonidas K. Polk. It's just Leonidas Polk. Polk was one of the more... We also had another Polk, right, with the Mexican War, and he killed a lot of Mexicans. His own fucking war was bullshit, too. He basically put the soldiers into Mexican territory. They killed the soldiers, and then they said... they're killing Americans, right? No, the Americans was trying to kill them, and then they defended themselves. But it was all a lie. So we've had that before. The Mexican-American War was based upon a lie. The aggressors were not who the president said the aggressors were. The aggressors were us. It was America, and we wanted to steal their land, just like we stole the Shawnee and the Potawatomi and the Skippakittiki and all the Chickasaw lands and all the other 34 Native American tribes in Kentucky.
They're fucking people, and so they should be better people, right? So that's immigration. It brings good ideas, it brings new ideas, and I think that we should be, just to be a conservative, say I want everything to fucking stay the same, never change. You're going against reality. You should be more sort of, I guess, you can adapt, right, to change. You should be adaptable to change. So the blood of Hessians, right? He's saying the blood is so fucking poison. Even mosquitoes went up there. They've been sucking the lager beer out of the dirty soldiers, so they're sucking the...
So the Polk was one of the more successful, yes, controversial political generals of the war, elevated to a high military position with no prior combat experience because of his friendship with the Confederate President Jefferson Davis. So he had no fucking prior combat experience, and here's he's the one that fucking broke the neutrality of Kentucky, and he pushed Kentucky into the arms of Lincoln. For Joshua Fry Bell, and Bell County is named after Joshua Fry Bell. So he's taken office August 30th, 1859. He's supported by states' rights and the institution of slavery. Although he believed in the right of states to secede from the Union, he hoped to avoid this outcome by reaching an agreement between the southern and northern states. To that end, he wrote a circular letter to the governors of the slave states December 9th, 1860, detailing a plan to save the Union. Magafin's plan was to unite the slave states around a set of minimum concessions to see if the North would accept them as an alternative to war. The concessions included a constitutional amendment repealing any state law that interfered with the enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act. Passage of amendments to the Fugitive Slave Act ensuring that any state that would not return a fugitive slave or obstructed a slave's return would compensate the owner of the slave. Passage of a law requiring extradition of anyone indicted by a grand jury for enticing the escape of a slave. Passage of an amendment to the Constitution guaranteed slavery in all current and future territories south of 36 degrees north latitude, the Mason-Dixon line. Passage of an amendment to the Constitution guaranteed all states the right of using the Mississippi River and provide protection for southern states in the U.S. Senate from oppressive slavery legislation. After the slave state governors refused Magafin's plan, he endorsed the Crinton Compromise authored by fellow Kentuckian John J. Crittenden. So he was first wanting to compromise. He wanted the Union to catch the slaves. If the slaves ran away, right, just like in Boone County, you had Margaret Garner who ran over into Cincinnati, and because of the fugitive slave clause, because they chased him into Ohio, they had to give her up and let her fucking go back. And then before she went back into slavery, she sliced her daughter's throat and killed her, so that way she wouldn't go back and get raped and be treated like a fucking piece of shit slave. In one act, she was able to say something more than what everybody was able to say. All the abolitionists put together, she said that death was more preferable than slavery. Beer, right? They don't even have blood. They just got beer in their fucking veins. So a bunch of goddamned alcoholics. These Protestants were fucking anti-alcohol too. So that's another big thing. The Germans were bringing alcohol. The Catholics drank alcohol in their mass. So when they were, Puritans, Protestant purists, they were sitting there saying that these Germans and Irish are bringing alcohol and therefore they're the fucking devil. So alcohol was the crack, of the Civil War, period. So alcohol was the crack of the Civil War, period. Those damn alcoholics, there's fucking alcohol peddling fucking alcohol addicts, goddamn them motherfuckers, right? So they're the ones bringing all of our society down. Not really. They're giving that service. So Leonidas Polk was basically inexperienced, just a fucking virgin when it comes to murder and killing and shit. And I don't know whose decision it was to invade, but that decision fucked the Confederacy up, because once Kentucky went into the hands of the Union, it was all over. Once you get Kentucky on your side, they always say, whoever, Ohio votes for, so goes the nation. Well, that's Kentucky, okay? So you don't fuck with Kentucky, because if you fuck with Kentucky, then we'll fucking... even if most of us are Confederates, we'll fucking go against you just because you fucked our neutrality up. Hey, wait, you're fucking our neutrality up? That's bullshit. It sucks. She killed her fucking child, but she did it out of mercy and she did it out of love. And it also showed the barbarity that slavery is. The Margaret Garner had got raped by Boone County Protestants. The Boone County Protestants were raping the shit out of Margaret Garner. She was only 20-something years old. And then she's going to die of cholera or some shit like 6 years later. So this entire ordeal was a big cause celebre all across the nation. And it was a precursor to, I think, the Civil War. So this is... right, the Fugitive Slave Act. He's all about the Fugitive Slave Act. So he's saying, hell, if Margaret Garner runs into Ohio, she's our property, and if you want to keep the property because of your fucking morals, well, you got to pay us for our property. Well, they're human. It's kind of like the same shit France did to fucking Haiti. So France, occupied Haiti, killed lots of Haitians and shit. Then Haitians got their freedom, and the only way France would recognize the Haitian government as being a proper government is if they agreed to pay for the reparations, because France said that they owned a lot of property in Haiti, and therefore, because they had abolished and destroyed all that property, Haiti had to fucking pay France some reparations to pay back. Well, the property they're talking about was the slaves. France owned a lot of slaves, and they owned the entire island, so they wanted reparations for the fucking slaves and for the fucking natural resources that Haiti had to offer, because in France's mind, all of Haiti was to France. So Haiti pays reparations to France for 100 years to pay them back for the property, so-called property that they stole, the fucking people, their own freedom and then their own resources. And that's fucking bullshit. They basically tricked fucking Haiti, and then it sucked all those resources out for 100-something years, and it's still fucking poor ass fucking state now. Imagine if they, instead of paying millions of dollars in reparations to France, the idea of reparations is actually to pay the slaves for the work that they did. So if anybody owed anybody reparations, France owed Haiti reparations for all the free fucking slave labor that they had got out of them, and for the shit that they did. So in terms of reparations, the Fugitive Slave Act, they want to make sure you can keep the slave, but make sure you pay me more for my slave. No, motherfucker, not only should I not pay you for your slave, you need to pay her or him for the money that they work for you for fucking free. Nah, you fucking pay for that shit. They didn't work for fucking free because you think you can own another person. You can't own another person.
To people that need it. People are miserable with their lives, and plus people should be allowed to do whatever they want to do, right? If they want to get drunk, that's their body, it's their mind. They can get drunk if they want to. With that, faxed and reloaded and fired again. When the bow-legged, wooden-shoed, sauerkraut, stinking, bloaty, sausage-eating, hen, roost, robin, Dutch sons of bitches had accomplished the brilliant feat of taking down the secession flag on the riverbank, they reported to another flag of the same sort, which their guns did not cover, flying gloriously and defiantly, and dared, double big black dog dared, as we used to say at school, to take that flag down. I dare you to take that shit down.
Now we're going to be for Unionist and for Lincoln. So there's two big battles that I want to mention. Let's see if I make sure I mention all the other stuff. There's Battle of Sacramento. There's a historical marker commemorates the Battle of Sacramento in McLean County, Kentucky, December 28, 1861. Nearly 300 Confederate cavalry led by Nathan Bedford Forrest. Right, so that's Henry Watterson's friend, the Courier Journal. The founder of the Courier Journal was best friends with Nathan Bedford Forrest, and he's the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, and also a big fucking Confederate that went around killing lots of people. So he's just like John Hunt Morgan. He's a guerrilla fighter, and then these guerrilla fucking actions will keep on going after the Civil War. Right, it was the KKK was the dead, the Confederate dead. Right, it was the ghost of the Confederate dead coming back to haunt those who was against the fucking Confederacy. The South will rise again. No, you Confederates are a bunch of terrorists and you're against America, and go fuck yourselves, you piece of shit, racist fucking bastards. So the Southerners were scouting near the town when a local teenage girl warned them that Union troops are nearby, ready for a fight. Forrest advanced and attacked the 3rd Kentucky Union Cavalry. Forrest grabbed the rifle, fired the first shot of the battle. A sharp skirmish erupted, and the Union horsemen were chased towards Sacramento. Forrest later called the running fight a promiscuous saber slaughter, and that left their bleeding and wounded strewn along the whole route. So he's all fucking proud and happy about it, right? Didn't give a shit. A promiscuous saber slaughter. So that's very fucking, it's, the language is very, it has lots of adjectives to it, so he's very descriptive in his language. He's showing us what's going on, not just telling us, and I'm not sure if this is his people that's dying or if he's killing people and leaving dead people everywhere.
Right, so they had the Confederate flag, stars and bars up, and then some of the Dutch or somebody fucking robbed them, and now they're all pissed off again. So they all, well shit, you took it down, but you know what? We went ahead and put it back up again. What the fuck you going to do now? You going to take it down now? So basically threaten anybody who takes this flag down. So Portland, it was serious in Kentucky when they fucking seceded, when they had these fucking, putting these flags up. They're being serious about this shit. So, let's see, the colonel could choose 150 of his best fighters or 250 of his lager beer Dutchmen, the goddamn lager beer, fucking with their alcohol and their drunken ways, these fucking white German Dutch fucking assholes, fucking immigrants from fucking Germany, fuck them assholes, right, coming to my country, us white fucking Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, English-speaking British fucking country, how dare you come into our country with your damn alcohol and your damn freedom way.
So that's the same shit. It's also all about slavery, right? So he wanted to unite all the slave states, and it's all about slavery. On January 1861, Beriah Magafin called the state legislature into special session, asked them to call a convention to determine Kentucky's course in the Civil War. The Unionist majority in the legislature feared that the vote of the convention would take Kentucky out of the Union, and so they refused to call the convention. In response to President Abraham Lincoln's call for troops, April 15, 1861, Magafin defiantly declared by telegram, "I will not send a man nor a dollar for the wicked purpose of subduing her sister southern states." Encouraged by Magafin's rebuff of Lincoln, Confederate Secretary of War Leroy Pope Walker requested Kentucky troops for the Southern cause a week later, but Magafin similarly refused him too. Magafin called another special session of the legislature in May 1861. Again, the legislatures refused to call a convention to determine the state's course in the war. Instead, they approved a resolution of neutrality. So instead of doing the convention, which would have maybe gone fucking Confederate, maybe would have gone Union, who knows. But instead, they declared neutrality. And Magafin sent a letter to Confederate President Jefferson Davis asking he recognize and honor Kentucky's neutrality. In August, he sent an identical letter to President Lincoln. Although Magafin pledged to abide by the will of the majority of the people in the state and to uphold the state and federal constitutions, Unionists in the legislature did not trust.
I'm tired of your fucking freedom speaking, your constitutions and your democracy and your damn beer and your education system and, your bridges and architecture and every fucking thing else Germany brought into America. That's what these fucking assholes are fucking saying, right? Yeah, okay, well, every time you drive over the Brent Spence Bridge or any of the suspension bridges, that's a German who constructed that. So, it's lasted for about 100 fucking years, even though nobody's put any money into it. So, Germans know how to construct shit. So, yeah, there's the Know Nothing Party give rise to hatred of all things that wasn't what they considered to be the Native American. It was called the Nativist movement. Even today in schools, you got white supremacist female teachers, like at Valley High State School, Julie Chancellor, right, who's sitting there saying that she's the white massa and fuck everybody.
Confederate Brigadier General Charles Clark called it one of the most brilliant, successful cavalry engagements which the present war has witnessed. Several dozen Union Confederate troops were killed and wounded in the battle, foreshadowed Forrest's career as an able cavalry commander. So this is one of the first battles of fucking Nathan Bedford Forrest. He found his rise in the, being a military man with in the Confederacy, killing fucking Kentuckians, killing 3rd Kentucky Union Cavalry. He's murdering Kentuckians willy-nilly because they liked Lincoln and they, thought slavery was bullshit and they were in the right all around. America is better than, the United States. This is a better fucking deal for all of us to be unionized. And unions are just good anywhere. Unions in the workplace, unions in family, unions of friendship, unions in solidarity. That's how you get solidarity. So, yes, I'm definitely pro-union. A little bit different way, but that's the slavery fucking thing. You can't get past the slavery thing. You all defended slavery with your blood.
Else's view. So you still got dictators in the fucking school, and they still hate everything that's not what they consider American. Her being a white American, I'm sure she has felt the benefits and the privileges of white America. I guarantee this country's built for her, right? So I remember in Malcolm X Debate Club, they tried to put the privileges on me, saying, hey, you're the privileged asshole, you're the one that's responsible for everything, so we need to fucking hate you, and if we have racist hate against you, really, this is white women telling me this. Really, white women? And then they told me I fucking just shut up, because what am I going to do? Argue with the white woman? Yell at her, tell her that she's fucking wrong? Nah. You want to be wrong? You want to be stupid? You go ahead and you be wrong.
And Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Ku Klux Klan man, so he was fucking racist. He hated black folks. That was the reason he was involved. The reason why Beriah Magafin didn't want to fucking, his compromises, Beriah Magafin had a lot to do with the Fugitive Slave Act. So they wanted to change the Fugitive Slave Act. So there was basically it was all slavery, right? He had 6 commands or 6 demands of all the states, but 5 of those demands had to do with slavery. So let's actually see Beriah Magafin. We'll actually go to his demands. It was talking about here, okay? So he was elected governor of Kentucky by a vote of 76 to 108. 67,000 over Magafin. In the state's special elections in June 1861, Unionist candidates swept 9 of Kentucky's 10 congressional districts and obtained 2/3 majorities in both houses of the General Assembly. From then on, they routinely overrode Magafin's vetoes. In early September 1861, both Federal and Confederate troops entered Kentucky. Magafin declared both sides equally guilty of violating Kentucky's neutrality and demanded that both sides withdraw. A resolution called for the immediate withdrawal for both Union and Confederate forces was defeated in the legislature. Instead, the legislature passed a resolution ordering only the Confederate troops out of the state. Magafin vetoed the resolution, but his veto was overridden, and he obediently issued the order for the Confederates to withdraw. In November 1861, a self-constituted convention of Southern sympathizers met at Russellville, Kentucky, in order to form a provisional Confederate government for the state. Despite his Southern sympathies, Magafin denounced the actions of the convention. Okay, so that's Beriah Magafin, right? It's all about Fugitive Slave Act. It's all about slavery. Do what the fuck he's saying to do. And everybody's just supposed to fucking, kiss his fucking ass and shit. So,
you be stupid. If I would have argued, I would have argued out of love. Because I wanted them to think sort of how I thought. So you're sitting there telling me that because I got white skin and I got a dick, that my life has just been fucking peachy? No, absolutely not. I got assholes on the liberals. I got fucking, basically, people that you think should be nice aren't nice. Everybody's a bunch of fucking dicks around here. So y'all want to go and hate fucking the white supremacist, fascist assholes that run the fucking system. I hate that same fucking group, but I hate fascists of all fucking kinds. So that's fuck a fascist. I'm not sure why I went in that direction. White supremacy, because the white teacher didn't want to talk about the fucking
Battle of Mill Springs, Battle of Perryville. Let's get Fort Duffield, and then we'll finish with those two battles, and then we'll call it quits, okay? So that's the biggest thing, right? That's how the war started. It's how it kind of ended, and, you got to kind of see. I think it's a good general overview. I think I did all right there. So Civil War, Fort Duffield, Union stronghold at the mouth of the Salt River. So right at the Salt River, right where Salt River and the Ohio River meet, that's where Fort Duffield is constructed, on top of the fucking mountain, on top of the Fort Duffield Hill, I guess, the Fort Duffield. And you also got like some boating docks and some other shit here. It was actually it's cool to look at this, because I remember driving up through this shit, or walking up and seeing it, and it also sees like there's so much more. So I wondered if I went around and discovered more, if I would have actually found more stuff. I saw the main spot, but I didn't really go through the trails and shit. So it seems like there's more exploring to be done.
Culture and the Germans and the Irish. Oh, it's just me. I'm just a white American. I'm just a white American. Really? We're just planted here, and you've been here the whole fucking time. No, actually, it's not true. In fact, the Native Americans could butcher your entire family, and they would have historical justification to do so. They could take your family and start whipping the shit out of them and making them go fucking as a slave out in the damn fields. They'd have historical justification for that. But I bet you'd probably object to that type of bullshit, wouldn't you? So that's, white women, all they had to do was just look at a black man and say, hey, he looked at me, and then the KKK would fucking kill that black man. That's white women. So, yeah, the white men are the ones that's doing the fucking damage, and they're doing the brutality, but they're doing it in their minds to protect white womanhood. And white womanhood is firmly established, firmly protected. You want to talk about people who got privilege that don't have fucking hard fucking lives?
So that's a good picture of the Fort Duffield. Here's Wikipedia's Fort Duffield. It's a Union American Civil War fort located outside West Point, Kentucky. It saw use in 1862. It was abandoned when it appeared that the war would never come near the fort. Ironically, John Hunt Morgan would, in 1863, lead his raiders right past the fort, and could have been stopped had the fort not been abandoned. So, in a way, they had abandoned it, right? So they used it in 1862, but had banned it. Then they thought that the war would never come clear to the fort, so they basically just kept advancing their lines, right, where the Union lines were. That's anything behind it they had conquered, so they didn't need to fortify it anymore. But John Hunt Morgan, a raider, a fucking terrorist, right, he runs through. I think he burns down Lexington. I'm not sure what he does in Louisville. Probably did similar, shit, but there was nobody in the fort when he actually came by. So that kind of sucks in a way. That was only in operation for a year, and then they immediately fucking abandoned it, and then John Hunt Morgan was able to get through. William Tecumseh Sherman was concerned with the Confederate positions in Bowling Green and Columbus, and sent the 37th Indiana and the 9th Michigan regiments.
Look at Julie Chancellor. She makes $55,000 a year. She just oppresses the shit out of the kids. She doesn't teach anything. Lecture. Only 5% is being retained. And she's the dictator. She's an oppressor. She doesn't teach democracy, constitution, none of the shit that the Germans brought forth. Nor does she talk about the truth about, any of the fucking history. So all these kids are going to grow up thinking the bankers are great, white people are the best, and all this other shit. So, I think that's a really bad deal when you see a lot of fucking historical, continuances till today. Started out with white supremacy and fucking butchery and oppression, and it still is today. They were going to defend their fucking oppression against slaves with violence. And that's how it is in the classroom. You better listen to your white massa. If you don't shut up and sit down and listen to your white massa, I'm going to call the fucking fat security guard and you're going to get drug out. So it's oppression with the threat of violence. That's slavery.
So there's Indiana fighters there too. I just heard about the Michigan people. The plan was to use West Point as a Union supply base for Elizabethtown. Sherman ordered the fort to be built on Perman Hill to protect the town and supply a route. Construction began on November 3rd, 1861 and was finished in 2 months. The fort was named for Reverend George Duffield of Detroit, whose son, Colonel William W. Duffield, led the 9th Michigan Infantry. There are 950 troops stationed there, but they were soon sent to the front lines, and the fort was mostly unused in 1862, seeing its last use that fall. So Fort Duffield was only up for fucking not even a year. And they say it's the most, it's the best well-maintained earthworks in Kentucky, so this is better than any archaeological digs or any sort of. It's the oldest well-maintained, right? So it was only in operation for just a short duration. And so the fort's mostly a serpentine wall, unlike the typical star-shaped Civil War forts in Kentucky.
That's slavery. Okay, so we still haven't really, stood up against slavery today. The Confederates, the big thing that the Confederates did, they started a state guard, and the Confederates were the ones that attacked Kentucky first. So I'm gonna get into this a little bit more, but the Confederates attacked Kentucky first, and they created the state guard. So they created a state guard which was pro-Confederates, and the state guard, started organizing like a their own militia. Eventually, the legislator of Frankfort petitioned the Union to get some troops, and then there was Union for the rest of the time. So when they got the Union troops, they created the Home Guard. So you got the State Guard and the Home Guard, and I love those names because they're basically both are protecting the state power, right? The state of Kentucky, the government of Kentucky can do as they like. They can kill, they can enslave, they can hurt whoever they want. The state is the ultimate power, right? They got a monopoly on violence. The State Guard.
The earthworks of the fort are well preserved. Originally, there was a 1 mile clearing between the fort and any trees, but since the fort's abandonment, the forest has grown back around the fort, and a fresh water spring was inside the fort. So they had a freshwater spring. They was basically had all the water. It was a good fucking location. It was a good spot, right? It was mostly a serpentine wall, so basically the fort was mostly that fucking construction of the earthworks, right? The earth mound. Sort of serpent mound, Cahokia type shit. So that was
they were sitting there saying they're protecting the state, right? But the Home Guard, once they realized the State Guard was formed, they formed the Home Guard because the Home Guard was, this is our home, this is who we are. But really, they're defending the state and the state government. And generally, the government is, the government of Kentucky is the state of Kentucky, but the people and the state are two different things. The idea is the state's supposed to speak up for the general people, for the common people, and get commonwealth for everybody, right? All this wealth is for the common people. That's the idea of a commonwealth. But a lot of times the state can be separate from the interest of its working class peoples, and they can just run roughshod over everybody and make a bunch of rich people. They could install slavery. They could also have a Burbridge go around, just massacring anybody and everybody who's in favor of slavery.
Whatever it is I just said. Alright, so finishing out strong. Battle of Perryville. By October 9th, Polk's forces had fallen back to the town of Perryville. The dry summer of 1862 had left water in short supply, and when the Union troops learned of water in Perryville's Dr. Creek, they began to move on the Confederate position. Bragg shared Smith's assumption that the bulk of the Union attack would be directed at Lexington and Frankfort and ordered Polk's forces to attack and destroy the approaching Union forces. God, this is so boring. I don't even give a shit about the battles. All the politics is why they're fucking fighting each other, right? So once the politics was in line, Lincoln says no slavery and we're all together, and the Confederate says we're for slavery and we're not all together, then anybody was just allowed to kill anybody, right? You saw that's how Lincoln fucking, or that's how, not Lincoln, but he did rise that way, but he rose the same way that John Brown did. John Brown did the exact same shit that Abraham Lincoln did, but John Brown did his fucking ways with small-scale violence, right? So he'd be considered a terrorist, and Abraham Lincoln would be considered a fucking war general president, which is amazing. They did the exact same thing. That he wanted to end slavery with violence, and then Abraham Lincoln was able to end slavery, preserve the Union through violence. So I could go into. I think there's a battle of Shiloh. I feel
the state can, the state can dictate with the point of a bayonet, with guns, with violence, policy that everybody else has to follow. Either it's for slavery or against slavery. Either way, it's to the point of a gun. You do as the fuck as the state says, because they're allowed to do anything and everything to you. And the history books, they always talk about the governors and the presidents and the rich people, but when it comes to a bunch of little, even Wikipedia today killed Ronnie Lee Smith and Samantha Ramsey. So even today, when there's, if the president or some big person had got, something bad had happened to him, that would be worthy of note. But when a poor person, a working class person gets, Rachel Corrie gets ran over by a bulldozer, who gives a shit? She's dead. She's not going to fucking speak up for anything now. Now she has no power. Who gives a shit? And so everybody just forgets about him. And I think that's bullshit, because history is written by us, we the people. And I look at history
like I want to know what the Battle of Shiloh was about. Battle of Mill Springs, also known as Battle of Logan's Crossroads. If you use a Union terminology, which why wouldn't we use a Union terminology? Supposedly the victors are the ones that create history, but so far the losers in Kentucky are creating the history, and the losers are still fucking running a lot of shit around here. Every time you see a Confederate flag, you see a fucking loser. You also see a person who's in favor of terrorism and they're against the United States of America. Okay, so
from the ground up instead of from the top down. History is what I do and what my friends do and what we all do. And if the state is sitting there killing our friends, the state of Kentucky, the history of Kentucky is not going to be all my friends were being assholes and then the state killed them and there was, fuck Jonathan Masters. No, absolutely not. That's bullshit. That's not true. But that's the Jewish, that's the Native Americans, that's how they do. The victors write the history books. And because they write the history books, then they get to dictate, this is how things happened in the past. Say Cortez or Pizarro. Pizarro, he's a butcher, right? He fucking killed all the Incan Empire, wiped out the entire Incan Empire. Now he goes into the temple to take over the town and to steal their gold and to, rape their women. So he goes into the temple where their main fucking worshiping place is, the Incan Empire. And when he goes into the temple, he's killing everybody willy-nilly, not giving a shit, but
Battle of Logan's Run in Union terminology, fought in Wayne and Pulaski County. That's central Kentucky, middle Kentucky, southern, central, near Nancy, Kentucky on January 19th, 1862. Yeah, so shit happens there. So let's just check out the Battle of Shiloh. These uploads have taken a while. I got U.S. Fort Duffield, where I went around Fort Duffield, and so you actually get to see the fort, and then I did some footage about West Point. I wanted to just take that bridge out over Salt River, and they were doing some painting, and so they were putting up trusses and shit underneath the fucking bridge so they could paint the thing. And so I got to check out that bridge, and then I kind of got some of the town, too. I kind of drove through the town. So those things have been uploading. This got another 2 hours left. It's uploaded 74%. Okay. See, Battle of Shiloh. It's also known as the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, a major battle in the Western Theater, American Civil War in southwestern Tennessee. So Battle of Shiloh didn't even happen in the United States, or in Kentucky. So what other battle?
He started out and he writes in his memoirs that he did it because they were barbaric. They believed in human sacrifice. And since they believed in human sacrifice, that was so barbaric and disgusting, they killed every person, man, woman, child, stole their gold, raped their women, stole their culture. Nobody left of fucking the Inca Empire except for Machu Picchu, right? Just a bunch of fucking earthworks. And so that's the barbarity of them. They'll be the most barbaric, savage fucking assholes, but they'll say, hey, they were doing human sacrifice, so, give and take a little bit. No. Murder is wrong, so human sacrifice would be wrong. So just kill the people if you want to be moral about
battles. Is there any other significant battles that I want to focus on? Yeah, everybody's killing everybody. It's sort of like the fucking wars of the Native Americans, right? You have a lot of dead whites and a lot of dead Native Americans, and who started what, who did what. In the general thrust of history, we know what's going on. So look at the Confederates. They're the terrorists, and they're the assholes and shit. And they're the ones that act like the fucking natives, right? They're the ones going around fucking guerrilla warfare, standing behind trees and shit. No fucking, I don't know if there's honor in it. I think it's smart when it comes to war and battling. But the savage nature of the Confederates are the savages, okay? They're niggers. In their minds, they created the word nigger in their head because to them, a black person is the worst of all human creation. So, all humans have a good and bad wolf inside them. But when you characterize those niggers, then what you're actually saying is they're the evil parts of the human spirit. And so the most evilest parts of the human spirit, one can only understand by knowing their own motivations and their own experiences. So why do they think that black folks just want to have sex with their white women? Because they just want to have sex with their white women. Why do they think, black folks are, more prone to violence or anything else? Basically, all the fucking bullshit that race has put on black folks, they're just telling on themselves. They're making it look like black folks are shiftless.
Kill those who are killing this human sacrifice, but to take over the whole city and conquer everybody and to kill anybody and everybody just because the leader, who they were being oppressed by too, was doing some bad shit. It just, these assholes, it takes the little tiniest justification to do the most barbaric fucking shit. Take Israel and Gaza. They say that 3 Israeli kids were kidnapped, and that's why they declared war on Gaza. And they killed over 2,000 people. 500 of them are fucking babies. They cut fucking children in half. just killing children, mostly civilians, and bombing the shit out of everybody. So in exchange for 3 Israeli teenager lives, they killed 500 children.
And lazy and don't do shit, but the plantation massa is shiftless and lazy. He gets all the slaves to do the shit. The slaves are doing all the fucking work. So that's one lie, right? No, black folks aren't shiftless and lazy. They just don't want to do your work, right? They just aren't excited and happy to do your work, with the threat of a whip. You better fucking pick my damn cotton or I'm going to whip you up. How come they don't work hard? They just barely do whatever they need to do, and that's it, right? Yeah, that's pretty much all they fucking do. And good for them, right? They should do that shit. And they also say shiftless, they say rapists, right? They're going to fuck the white women. Oh my God, they're going to fuck our white women. Well, women are attractive to everybody. Dave Chappelle said that his dick is a humanitarian, but when it comes to men, he saw race. And then, let's see, what was the other one? There was the rapist, and then I said something about me more prone to violence. So, men are capable of violence. So when white supremacists look in their own souls and they pull out the fucking, the worst parts of their own souls, they put it upon
Palestine. I mean, we're saying that the Israeli kids are more important than the Palestinian kids. If 3 Palestinian kids died, nothing would happen. But 3 Israeli kids have died, so then therefore 500 kids have to die. I'll even make another fucking comparison. So you got Burbridge, right? You got General Burbridge, Stephen Burbridge, who was known as a butcher. So you had all this 1964s when he's installed, so towards the end of the Civil War. In Kentucky, you had a lot of Confederate guerrillas that was happening, and so Stephen Burbridge, he was elected, or he got appointed in there. They declared martial law, and he just went around just cleaning house. And so
those that they condemn, they act like they know, black folks because that's how they are. And men do have testosterone, and there are a lot of sex crimes, so you should watch out for everybody. But to assume that white males are somehow any better than black males, and on that front, I think is ridiculous. It's fucking bullshit, and very much could be the opposite. So the reason why I would say it's the opposite is because black, Thomas Jefferson, he's raping his slaves and shit. They're raping their slaves, and there was raping women. The civil rights movement got started because white men were raping black women and nobody was doing a fucking thing about it. So
if he ever found a Union citizen, an unarmed Union citizen dead, he would kill 4 guerrillas, 4 Confederate guerrillas who he had prisoners. So he had prisoners, but if he found an unarmed Union citizen dead, he would kill 4 military men of the Confederates right where that fucking tragedy happened. So, and people were outraged. They called him a butcher, and they called him all this other shit. The Duke of Cumberland was known as a butcher too, but we named shit after him. So to call him a butcher, I think it's actually a good thing, because this is the Confederates are calling him a butcher. And so since he's fucking killing a bunch of racist Confederates, good. This is fucking Django. We got a real life Django in Stephen Burbridge. So they complained that said that he was a butcher because he was killing 4 soldiers to 1 fucking unarmed.
Eventually, people got fucking pissed off about shit like that. And so the white men were the ones who were doing the fucking raping. White men were protecting white womanhood. So, white womanhood might think that she's being protected, but really she's being terrorized. Her oppression is the exact same as the black oppression, but because she feels like she's being protected, she's got some power. He's going to do this for her. Okay, go ahead. I feel like I'm a good woman because now, just because you was able to get him to kill some poor black dude, you all committed a crime.
Then they called him a butcher for that. So 4 to 1, that was the ratio, right? 4 military members for 1 civilian killed. Well, the way Israel does it, for 3 civilian kills, they'll kill 2,000 fucking civilians. So that's not even a 4 to 1 ratio. That's like, seriously, we'll just do the kids. So 3 kids to 500 kids. So that's what? That's over 100 times fucking ratio. So imagine if Stephen Burbridge did that. If they saw a Union citizen dead and they just went and killed 100 fucking Confederates. Not the soldiers though, just the women and the children. So that would be the comparison between Gaza and Israel and Stephen Burbridge in Kentucky. So if that's okay, if it's okay for Israel to just fucking kill everybody because of 3 dead, Israeli teenagers.
And frankly, justice says that they should come back and just fucking kill you all. And so that's just talking about, the Civil War in general. What was I talking about? I was talking about the Civil War in Kentucky. It was bloodshed, it was murderous, it was violent, it was psychopathy. And it's weird. It's weird to think about violence. And any time, you know, so during the war, during these 4 years, if one person just went up to someone's house and they said, "You're a Confederate," killed all the Confederates, they could steal everything in their house, and they might not even be Confederates. So whenever you have a period of years at the war of this or the Revolutionary War, those are periods that basically any type of wanton violence could happen, and there's going to be no justice, no fairness on any front whatsoever. And that's ridiculous. That's fucking bullshit. That's why war is fucking bullshit. And even revolutions. I'm starting to question revolutions because a lot of times, why is a revolution got to be so damn bloody? It doesn't have to be. There's been revolutionary. Barack Obama was elected, and that's a type of.
Then whenever the Confederates killed a fucking teenager or citizen of America, since they were the terrorist bastards, he would take 4 of the terrorists and just fucking blow them up and kill them. And they hated it because they didn't feel like that was fair, right? It's not proportional. This a citizen, well, it's just a citizen. That's terrorism. You're killing innocent people. But there's terrorism all over. The William Tecumseh Sherman, he does his March to the Sea. And that was just one big terroristic campaign. He was just burning houses down and terrorizing the general public. So, you know, I mean, that's guerrilla warfare. Once they start intensifying the fucking war efforts, and then eventually we study it as a battle. So, I mean, today, if somebody marched into town and just started killing everybody, right, that would be a horrible thing. It'd be a horrible tragedy. People wouldn't understand why it was happening. But during war, if you walked into an enemy town and just started killing everybody, then you're a hero. So war changes the entire fucking perspective of everything.
So revolution, that was an electoral revolution, and that changed some things, but a lot of the same things are going on too. So it's not much of a revolution. To totally destroy the system, maybe you have to chop some heads off, like with the French Revolution. But just the idea, those periods, okay? So none of the war periods are any good, but the Revolutionary Wars, there seems to be some justification in anything that's done under a revolutionary banner. Everything is all excused. And so the Civil War was a revolution. That was a major revolution. Lots of bloodshed, lots of overturning the system, outlawed slavery, changed the whole fucking society, made the federal government stronger than the state government, and, got rid of slavery. So, I mean, it had a lot of fucking implications, a lot of bloodshed, and it was revolutionary. So a lot of people actually says that the Civil War was the second American Revolution, which could be the third one, right? Because the War of 1812, and you could also even extend it even farther if you look at the intercolonial wars that happened before the French and Indian War. You had 4 world wars. 4 world wars happened. Civil wars, right? World War, Civil Wars that happened throughout.
So there's a big heist at the Graves County gun grab. This will be the last information that I talk about out of this book. A band of Paducah rebels in cahoots with a state legislator swiped 900 state-owned muskets and 6 cannons from the Graves County seat. And then there's headlines, and they want to find out who did it, right? So Paducah rebels, it seems like Confederates, and they stole 900 state-owned muskets and 6 cannons from the Graves County seat. So rebels fucking stealing the fucking guns and shit. It's fucking war, and war as hell. So, this is one civil war in Kentucky. We've had 4 or 5 civil wars before this civil war had happened. The American Revolution, King George's, King William's, and Queen Anne's War, French and Indian War, and the War of 1812. So that's 6. That's 6 civil wars Kentucky has had before the Civil War actually happened, right? And
Europe and North America. And 4 different times before the American Revolution: the French and Indian War, Queen Anne's War, King William's War, and King George's War. So, yeah, that's the Civil War in a nutshell. The Civil War, we can hope to have God on our side, but we must have Kentucky. And Lincoln got Kentucky, so he was able to position and get a hold of Kentucky, and then he was able to win the war before he got his head shot off. And in a way, assassinations typically work. So, Lincoln's Reconstruction never happened. His vision for America never happened. The Confederates took power, and his fucking vice president fucking sold black people down the river in a heartbeat. And so the assassination did have some implications too. So I say the revolution's a revolution, and then I would say that after the revolution was sort of an anti-revolution. So it was a revolutionary war. It was the Second American Revolution. It was the birth of a nation, but it wasn't the birth of a nation like D.W. Griffith. It wasn't the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, because the fucking white supremacist, Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, fascist, totalitarian, fucking scorched earth, terroristic, murderous fucking bastards have been here since the beginning. They've been here from the whole time. So to say that the Civil War is the one that caused KKK to rise, and then that's somehow the birth of a nation, no, the KKK has always been around. Before the Civil War, the KKK was hating on Germans and Irish, so the KKK was actually anti-white.
So that's Civil War. That happened immediately after the Civil War. So Kentucky actually goes Confederate after the Civil War. During the Civil War, it was all Union, but once we won the war and then we started running our own thing, the Kentuckians started re-electing these fucking terrorist Confederates, and Confederates ran Kentucky for the next 50-something years. And in fact, I would even make an argument there's some Confederates right now. The governor of Kentucky comes from Dawson Springs, and that's where the Ku Klux Klan headquarters is. So is that a big fucking shock? Is that a big surprising? That he comes from the same culture that we're talking about here in the Civil War. So even though it's the Chickasaw land, a bunch of white savages were there.
People too. Or the Know Nothing Party was, which I think has lots of remnants of the KKK movement and the racist and shit. So, no, that's not the case. The KKK did not rise because of the fucking Civil War. The KKK rose because that's how America has been for a long ass time. Christian, Protestant, white Anglo-Saxon, murderous, genocidal, fucking racist, fucking dickholes in favor of slavery. And they're so in favor of oppression, they're willing to use violence in order to make sure, the black folks are enslaved. And then to somehow separate that from ourselves, I think it's ridiculous. So
still had some good people that fought against slavery for America and against the fucking Confederate terrorists. The blood of these Hessians would poison the most degraded tumblebug in creation. Okay, Hessians, that's Germans. Okay, the Dutch. When I think about my ancestry, I got Prussian, I got Bavarian, Bohemian, Austrian, and African bloodlines. Now, the Platzdeutsch in the area of Germany that I came from was very close to the Netherlands. The Netherlands, lowland, the Platzdeutsch is the language, which means low German because it's lowland German. The Netherlands is the lowlands. So whenever I have to hear about the Dutch, which is the Netherlands, right? So anybody that comes from, that is the Dutch or the Dutch area.
Yeah, the birth of a nation for Lincoln in the Civil War wasn't the KKK. It was the birth of America and the fact that all the colonies are together and we're our own country. We're an independent nation. We're making our own decisions. And we don't want fucking slavery in this fucking war no more. So there was a birth of a nation. Abraham Lincoln has been inspiring generations, over and over again. Abraham Lincoln died in 1865, 160 years ago, and you got Confederate fucking Kentuckians still bitching about fucking Abraham Lincoln for some shit he did over 160 fucking years ago.
Yeah, during the Hanseatic League, they were speaking fucking German. So a lot of times, there's the Dutch woman that went crazy with Jenny Wiley or with Virginia Wiley or Jenny. I don't know. There was two women that got kidnapped in Kentucky or whatever. So one of those women had a Dutch woman that goes fucking crazy on them both. And so that Dutch woman, they said, could have been German. Well, Dutch, German, they're right there next door to each other. So when I read about the Germans and when I read about the Dutch, when I read about the Dutch, I think of Germans and I think about my own ancestry. So this man is showing you the right before the Civil War, you had the Know Nothing Party that just took America by storm. The Know Nothing Party, they also killed Edgar Allan Poe, but the Know Nothing Party fucking just took America by storm. And the Know Nothing Party would become wildly popular because the Whig Party.
Are you fucking kidding me? Really? South gonna rise again? Confederacy? Fuck you. You're a white supremacist. You hate fucking black people, and that means you got a mental illness. You're fucked up in the head, and Americans have been fucked up in the head, for a long time. KKK came out of that fucking same mental illness. The genocide of the natives came out of that same mental illness. And why does that mental illness still carry on? Because we got a long fucking tradition and heritage and a historical heritage
had gone down. And so the Know Nothing Party was all about anti-foreigners, anti-Catholics, and anti-immigration. So fuck the Germans, fuck the Irish, fuck anybody that's not already been here, right? White people got here at least 100 years ago, right? So they thought they could claim everything. Actually, in Kentucky, they've only been here for like 90 years. So the people in Louisville that was being racist as fuck, they've only been here for a generation, and they acted like they, fucking deserve this fucking land for all time for only people that was like them. So no fucking Germans, no Irish, fuck the white Europeans. That's what the fuck, Louisvillians was saying. So here's more of this. Yankees weren't just the enemy to Lynn G. Faxon.
And culture and tradition of being fucking white supremacists. So Abraham Lincoln changed all that. Abraham Lincoln inspires me still today. He was inspiring then, and he's been inspiring people probably till the day he dies. So, God save the fucking king. I think he's right. Walt Whitman, oh captain, my captain, why did they kill you? Oh captain, my captain. You were such a great fucking war leader. You were, you guided us through this fucking crisis. And America was unionized, and they stuck it out, and they stayed together, and we're 50 states today. So without Abraham Lincoln, we wouldn't be the United States of America that we are today. You wouldn't have the 50 fucking states that you got today. You would just have 13 fucking British colonies. You'd have some French states, some Spanish-speaking states. So you'd have a whole fucking smorgasbord of, conflicting sort of nationalities.
Anti-German hatred, sauerkraut, stinking. It was Liberty cabbage during the First World War. We couldn't say sauerkraut, we had to say Liberty cabbage. Sort of like French fries, right, when we declared the Iraq War. So a lot of fucking similarities between the two. But again, this shows you the type of hatred that white people had for other white people. He's sitting there just making all this shit up. I mean, I don't know the sauerkraut. I know German people today, they're not big into sauerkraut. Bologna, sausage eating. Since I've learned about my German history and heritage, we did bring over a lot of the butchers, sort of the slaughterhouses killing fucking cows.
Which, I don't know, might not have been bad because it would have forced us to accept other cultures, right? But this is who we are. We're Americans today because of Abraham Lincoln. We got the country that was saved, and then we also have slavery was abolished. So good. When I look back in Lincoln's days, I like a strong arm sort of approach to fucking slavery. Fuck slavery. Get that shit out of here. I don't care for the violence and the tactics, but it was in the middle of a war, and I don't know. You got the guerrillas and the KKK, so you got these fucking angry fucking white men that just will use bloodshed in order to maintain their dominance, their social dominance, and to maintain the social stratification and the racial dictatorship that was put on black America. So, Battle of Shiloh, Civil War, Kentucky, Johnny Masters, Muldrow, Kentucky. Viva la Revolution. Peace.
An editor of the Columbus Crescent there, bow-legged, wooden-shoed, right, the Dutch, a bunch of Holland, all you bow-legged, wooden-shoed, sauerkraut, stinking, bologna, sausage-eating, hen, roost, robin, Dutch sons of bitches. Their commander was a thieving lion lush who embodied the leprous rascalities of the world and deserved to be hanged. So he wasn't just hating black people, he hated fucking bologna, sausage-eating Dutch, right? He hated the Dutch, hen, roost, robbing, so I guess he's saying Germans steal other people's chickens and shit. Bow-legged, I don't know if they're right horses, wooden shoes. I mean, basically just a bunch of stereotypical sort of